SNESdrunk.
A low-key great game for the NES is Micro Machines, a top-down racing game based on the tiny toys, featuring a commercial campaign with this guy, and if you don't recognize this dude, you'll recognize his voice.
Machine pocket playsets, there's a police station, fire station, restaurant, service station, and more. Perfect pocket portables to take any place, and there are many miniature playsets to play with, and each one comes with its own special edition Micro Machine vehicle and fun, fantastic features that miraculously move.
Did you get all that? The NES game introduced the idea of racing as tiny boats, tiny helicopters, and tiny tanks across settings like pool tables, bathtubs, gardens, and messy bedroom floors. It's a really fun game single player, but one big reason the NES game worked so well was how two-player racing was handled. Instead of resorting to a split screen like most other racers, both players stay on a single screen, and if one gets too far ahead of the other, the winning player gains a point, and if you win enough points to fill up the meter on the upper left there, you win the race. In other words, instead of racing for a finish line, you're racing for the edge of the screen, in some cases hoping to derail your opponent along the way by nudging him off the breakfast table. Micro Machines was ported to the Super Nintendo by Codemasters in December 1994, and do not be alarmed by the Ocean Software logo, they're only the publisher. And the game is just like the original NES game, with a couple improvements. There's an extra vehicle, some extra characters to choose from, but most importantly, it is up to 4-player compatible with the SNES multitap. Now, if we're being honest, there are a lot of 4-player games on the Super Nintendo where it's like, how in the heck am I going to find 3 other people to play Jeopardy Deluxe Edition with, or Hanna-Barbera's Turbo Toons, or Bill Walsh College Football? Not only is Micro Machines a fun, well-made game, but it's easy to get the hang of, and if it's easy to get the hang of, then it's that much easier to trick people into being your friends so you can play a 30-year-old racing game. The B button accelerates, the Y button brakes and reverses, and left and right on the D-pad rotate your vehicle, and that's it for the most part. What's kind of funny is that even if you don't own 4 controllers, the manual lays out a way to play the game with 4 people sharing 2 controllers. For example, player 1 would use up and down on the D-pad to turn while using the L button to brake and reverse, while player 2 would use that same controller using the face buttons to turn and the R button to brake, while accelerating is automated. And I'll give you just a second to imagine that visual and how stupidly awkward that would be. I mean, it does actually make sense. And hey, who needs personal space when you can share someone's grimy hand sweat playing Micro Machines? But I give the game a ton of credit for giving it the old college try. I do really like how the Micro Machines license is actually used really well here. Each race is different, and that each vehicle controls a little differently, both in terms of handling and how you can screw with your opponents. The heavier vehicles are built to knock the other cars out of the way, and the tanks can even fire at other tanks, which is always fun. Quicker vehicles like the sports car and Indy car go way too fast and can easily drift out of control, leaving you subject to all the obstacles on the track itself. The first Micro Machines game is a really fun time no matter if you play it on NES or SNES, and if you're a bit bummed out that there's not enough improvement or newer features on the Super Nintendo port, then I might be able to interest you in the sequel, Micro Machines 2 Turbo Tournament, made by Supersonic Software, a sort of spin-off of the original developer Codemasters, and you may not have been aware of this game because it was only released in PAL regions back in February 1996. The only North American release this game got was for DOS, but it also received overseas ports for Mega Drive, Game Gear, and Game Boy, and since it was made by essentially the same developer, the gameplay stays pretty much the same, just with more game modes and more vehicles. The main menu has 4 different modes. The challenge has you competing against 3 computer-controlled cars, and you have to finish in the top 2 in 25 straight races to beat the game. Head-to-head is you versus the computer in a combat race mode. Again, it's 25 races, but this time you earn a point every time your opponent falls off the track, and the driver with the most points after 3 laps wins. Super League is a Grand Prix mode with 4 series of tracks split into 4 races of 3 laps each, and there's also a time trial mode and a multiplayer mode. And yes, Micro Machines 2 has the same goofy 4-player format as the first game, where you can have 4 people sharing 2 controllers. I can't help but imagine how that would go between me and my older brother. There'd be more elbows thrown than Anthony Mason in the paint at Madison Square Garden. I mean, to the game's credit, that does introduce a physical component to the gameplay that not too many other titles can claim. Interestingly, since Micro Machines 2 was originally developed for Mega Drive, it was released there on a special ROM cartridge called a J-Cart, which allowed for 8 players simultaneously without a multi-tap adapter. How's that for chaos? So yeah, while there may not be a huge leap from the NES Micro Machines to the SNES version like you're used to seeing from other franchises like Mario or Contra, the PAL exclusive sequel does add a ton of new vehicles and a bunch of extra tracks, making it a nice complement to the original. Personally, I gotta say I prefer the original NES Micro Machines just for the music. The SNES edition isn't bad, the game just kind of fits better on NES. It's not like a big 16-bit style overhaul was needed for a series like this, but if you feel like it does, you'll be happy to know the series continued on PlayStation with Micro Machines version 3, which was later ported to the N64 under the title Micro Machines 64 Turbo, and you know, that one's pretty fun too. The series is still active today, kind of, with Micro Machines World Series being released for PS4 and Xbox One in 2017, but really, I don't think you can go wrong with any of the original Codemasters or Codemasters adjacent Micro Machines games. It's a well-designed game format with consistent controls across all platforms, and they're well worth playing today, especially with an extra player or 3. And that is all for now. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.